The year was 1874, and Montana's winter landscape stretched vast and unforgiving, an unending expanse of white that threatened to swallow everything in its silence. Eleanor, a woman sculpted by resilience and fortitude, found herself navigating this frozen terrain, surrounded by dependency and life's unyielding demands. Widowhood had a way of sharpening her resolve while simultaneously etching a tender erosion on her soul. Her cabin, a modest sanctuary made of timber and tin, stood defiantly against the blizzard that wailed like a grieving widow. It was a place of warmth, where the fire crackled in a brave defiance against the cold. Within those walls, Eleanor was a guardian, her role extending beyond that of mother to that of sole protector. Her young son, Jacob, was the anchor in her turbulent sea of emotions, his innocence both her solace and her burden. The wind outside was relentless, mimicking the lonely howl of wolves. Days blurred into nights, defined only by the increasing depth of the snow that encased their small world. Eleanor's life revolved around routine: feeding the cattle, tending the fire, ensuring Jacob's laughter never faded into oblivion. Each task was a battle akin to fighting against nature's cruel whim, a dance that required grace and unwavering determination. As the blizzard raged on, leaving its icy breath in every corner, Eleanor felt a familiar pang of isolation. Gone were the days when her husband's laughter would echo through their homestead, his sturdy presence a comfort against the uncertainties of frontier life. The memory of him was a bittersweet spectre, one she often visited in the quiet moments of solitude, where grief mixed with gratitude in equal measure. Every morning she rose before the dawn, her breath visible in the icy morning air, a reminder of the life she tirelessly maintained. The cattle, huddled in their enclosure, depended on her diligence. They were more than mere livestock. They were the livelihood that sustained her and Jacob, a testament to her husband's legacy. Her routine was meticulous, a dance of survival performed daily with unwavering dedication. Despite the cumbersome layers of fur and wool she donned, the cold still managed to seep through, chilling her resolve but never freezing it. A glance to where Jacob played by the fire, his small hands creating imaginary worlds with carved wooden figures, renewed her determination. His presence was a lighthouse, a beacon guiding her through the tempest of loneliness and longing. Outside, the world was muted, its noises swallowed by the endlessly falling snow. Inside, the harmonious symphonies of the fireplace crackling and Jacob's occasional giggles filled the air, creating an illusion of normalcy amidst chaos. She exchanged brief words of gratitude with the shadows of the past, acknowledging that in those fleeting moments of warmth and life, she was not alone. Yet, Eleanor was all too aware of the precarious balance she maintained. The storm was not merely a physical manifestation, it was emblematic of her inner turmoil, a reflection of the emotional and mental tempests she faced daily. Each gust of wind was a whisper of doubt, questioning her choices, her strength, her ability to persevere. As the days passed in this frozen tableau, Eleanor pondered the concept of desolation. It was not just the biting wind or the unyielding snow. It was the quiet longing for companionship, the yearning for a voice that understood without needing explanation, for a presence that reassured without uttering a word. Her life was stitched together by memories of love lost and life persistent, a tapestry woven from threads of resilience and hope. In the midst of it all, she realized that desolation was not solely defined by absence, but by the profound depth of presence her own. Eleanor embodied the essence of endurance, her spirit as indomitable as the winter itself. Beneath the intricacies of survival lay an unspoken truth. She was enough. Her love, her strength, her very presence were a testament to that truth, creating a sanctuary within herself, unacknowledged by the world outside. As the storm continued to hammer the landscape, Eleanor remained steadfast. Each chore completed, each laugh she coaxes from Jacob's lips, each breath she took was her resistance against the caress of despair. The blizzard outside mirrored her inner struggle, yet she stood firm, knowing that this, too, would pass. In those quiet moments of reflection, she understood the simplicity of her existence as an intricate dance with fate, where every step mattered. With clarity came acceptance that she was the architect of her narrative, in control of how it evolved. Despite loss, despite hardship, even in desolation, there was beauty. Even in sorrow, there was hope. Eleanor lived those truths each day, trusting the strength within her to guide them through the storm. Together, she and Jacob faced the winter, their bond an unyielding force that not even Montana's fiercest blizzards could rupture. In that, She found her peace, her version of contentment, in the silence of the snow. The howling winds of the blizzard seemed relentless, battering the sturdy wooden walls of Eleanor's cabin. The sound was a constant reminder of nature's unforgiving power, and inside, the small fire crackling in the hearth struggled to fend off the creeping cold. Eleanor wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders, while her young son, Jacob, played quietly with a hand-carved wooden horse near her feet. Each moment was drenched in the heavy silence that comes from years of solitude and hardship. The sudden, insistent knocking at the door was like a gunshot, reverberating through the room and jolting Eleanor from her thoughts. Her heart leaped as her mind raced through the possibilities. Visitors were rare in this isolated part of Montana, especially in the heart of winter. Fear tightened its grip around her heart as she thought of her duty to protect Jacob above all else. The cabin, for all its humble comforts, felt suddenly vulnerable. Jacob paused, sensing his mother's tension, his large eyes darting toward the door. "Mama, who's that?" he whispered, a mix of curiosity and apprehension in his voice. Eleanor rose slowly, her mind caught in a whirlpool of dread and duty. Was it someone in need, or a harbinger of danger? The knocking came again, more insistent this time, and Eleanor knew she had only moments to decide. She glanced at Jacob, then at the door, weighing the risks. Grasping the iron poker from the fire, a meager weapon, but a weapon nonetheless, Eleanor approached the door. Her voice was firm, masking the tremor of fear beneath. "Who's there?" she called out, bracing for the reply. The response came swiftly, a man's voice barely audible over the wailing storm. "Please, ma'am, I mean no harm. I'm lost in this storm, and need shelter just until the worst of it's past." His voice carried a note of desperation, one Eleanor knew well. The Montana winters had a way of stripping a person down to raw survival, and she recognized the humanity in his plea. But distrust was a persistent whisper in her ear, urging caution. She hesitated, thoughts clashing like thunder, compassion against uncertainty, the instinct to help warring with the need to protect. Eleanor's resolve solidified as she glanced at Jacob, who was watching her with eyes full of trust. She could not let fear rule her actions, not when a life hung in the balance, a life possibly as desperate as her own had been. She unlatched the door, opening it to reveal the man standing on her threshold, snow dusting his shoulders. He was a sorry sight, with eyes squinting against the wind, his cheeks red from the biting cold. Behind him, the snow swirled in chaotic flurries, a white shroud obscuring the landscape. His breath came in visible puffs, and it was clear he was on the edge of collapse. "Thank you," he gasped, stepping inside as Eleanor moved aside. As the door closed with a heavy thud, the warmth of the fire rushed to greet them, a stark contrast to the freezing gale outside. Eleanor remained silent, gesturing to a chair by the fire. She studied him carefully as he removed his snow-caked coat and sat, his hands stretching gratefully toward the heat. Her mind worked rapidly. There was something familiar about his face, a nagging recognition that she couldn't place. Jacob eyed the stranger with open curiosity, a child's unfiltered gaze. "Mama says it's nice to help people," he said, his innocent voice filling the cabin like a chime. The man offered a tired smile, his features softening as he looked at Jacob. "Your mama is right," he replied, his voice warmer now, gratefully accepting the hospitality extended to him. Eleanor remained standing, her grip on the iron poker relaxed but not forgotten. "What brings you out in this storm?" she asked, her voice steady, seeking answers. The man hesitated, his eyes shaded with an emotion she couldn't quite read. "It's a long story, one that starts in the wrongs of my past. But what matters now is the need to find my way back to something good, something honest." His words were like pieces of a puzzle, intriguing yet elusive. As the storm raged outside, time seemed suspended, the quiet urgency of his presence igniting a spark of memory in Eleanor's mind, though she couldn't yet fit the pieces together. She felt the beginning of a reckoning, one that would unfold with the night. As the wind howled and the fire flickered, Eleanor guarded her heart with wary empathy, knowing that the true test of her compassion and her courage was only just beginning. The wind outside roared relentlessly, a constant reminder of the blizzard's fury. Inside the small log cabin, the world felt equally tumultuous. Eleanor stood near the hearth, her eyes on the weather-beaten stranger now seated by the fire. Her son, Samuel, sat quietly at the table, his wide eyes darting between his mother and their uninvited guest. The room was warm, yet an icy tension hung in the air, more palpable than the winter chill that seeped through the cracks of the wooden walls. Eleanor's mind raced, her heart pounding in rhythm with the howling winds outside. Who was this man, really? Could he be trusted? Her instincts were on high alert, every fiber of her being poised to protect the one thing that mattered most, her young son. Her fingers brushed against the rough fabric of her apron, seeking reassurance in its familiar texture as she studied the stranger's face. He appeared worn, his skin weathered like old leather, the lines etched deep around his eyes, telling stories of hardship and survival. His clothes, though once sturdy and well-made, were now tattered and stained from travel. Yet beneath the grime and exhaustion, there was a quiet dignity about him, a steadfastness that spoke of resilience. "You've been traveling a long way," Eleanor ventured, her voice steady but guarded. She needed to know more, to pierce the mystery surrounding him. "What brings you here, to this part of Montana, in such a storm?" The stranger looked up, meeting her gaze. His eyes, a shade of stormy blue, seemed to carry the weight of countless sorrows. "I'm just passing through," he replied softly, his voice carrying a hint of an accent from back east. "Looking for work, mostly. This storm caught me off guard. I didn't mean to intrude." His apology hung in the air, lingering amidst the crackling firewood. Despite her unease, Eleanor felt a flicker of sympathy. Times were hard, she knew that better than most. Yet, trust was a fragile thing, easily broken and difficult to mend. She had learned that lesson all too well. "People say a lot about this land," the stranger continued, glancing around the cozy cabin as if trying to grasp the essence of their lives here. "It's as unforgiving as it is beautiful, isn't it?" Eleanor nodded, her gaze still scrutinizing. "It takes everything from a person, and gives little back. But it's home," she replied, a hint of pride coloring her words. Despite the hardships, she was fiercely protective of this place. Their conversation felt like a game of chess, each word a cautious move, probing for defense and opportunities. Samuel, sensing the tension, tugged at Eleanor's apron, whispering for reassurance. "Mama, is he going to stay long?" Eleanor knelt beside her son, brushing a gentle hand through his hair. "Just for a while, until the storm passes," she assured him, the lie slipping easily from her lips, a necessary comfort. Yet, her heart was laden with a heaviness born of uncertainty. As evening shadows lengthened, Eleanor prepared a humble meal. The scent of simmering stew filled the cabin, momentarily dispelling the overwhelming unease. They ate in silence, punctuated only by the soft clinking of cutlery and the occasional crackle from the fireplace. After supper, as the dim twilight bathed the cabin in a gentle glow, the stranger spoke again, his voice thoughtful. "I must commend you, ma'am, for managing out here. It's not easy, I reckon, raising a child on your own." His words, though simple, struck a deep chord within Eleanor. "You do what you must," she said quietly, the weight of her loneliness, her struggles, hinted at in her brief reply. Raising Samuel alone, since her husband's untimely death, had been both her greatest challenge and her deepest joy. Eleanor noticed the man's gaze shift, a flicker of something akin to recognition crossing his features. It was then, as her heart thudded in her chest, that a creeping sense of familiarity began to unfurl within her. She studied his features again, her mind reaching back to memories she had tried to lock away. The stranger must have sensed the change, for he straightened, his expression cautious. Whatever past lay between them, whatever silent acknowledgement passed unspoken, it was a ghost that lingered, but did not yet speak its name. Yet, Eleanor knew a revelation was poised on the horizon, as sure as the dawn that would follow the blizzard's wrath. The night stretched on, the storm a relentless force, cocooning them in its icy embrace. Eleanor tried to find solace in routine, in the simple act of clearing supper, banking the fire, and ensuring Samuel was safely tucked in his bed. All the while, her mind churned, trying to place the pieces of a puzzle that only now, in the heart of the storm, showed signs of coherence. As she settled into the rocking chair near her son's bed, ready for a long vigil, Eleanor realized the truth she sought was as inevitable as the approach of morning's light. Confrontation loomed, not as danger, but as a reckoning with the past she had long tried to bury beneath the snow and silence of Montana's winters. And so they waited, Eleanor and the stranger, their fates momentarily intertwined, as the storm continued its relentless symphony, a reminder of the forces both natural and human that shaped their lives. The dim, flickering light of the cabin cast shadows that danced among the corners, their movements as restless as Eleanor's heart. But no shadow was more menacing than the features of the man who sat just across from her, a stranger, and yet not a stranger. As she scrutinized the man's face, piecing together fragments of a past she hoped she'd buried, her heart constricted in her chest. Recognition slammed into her with the force of a winter gale. He was older now, lines of hardship etched into his skin, his hair frosted with the kind of gray that too much guilt or too many winters can bring. But his eyes remained unchanged, and in an unbearable moment of clarity, Eleanor saw the face of the man who had stolen her husband's life. The world outside was frozen in time, each flake of snow suspended in the air like a word unsaid. But within the confines of the cabin, the storm swirled unabated, chaos seething just beneath her composed exterior. She turned away briefly, steadying herself against the sturdy wooden table, as if bracing for another blizzard. Her fingers brushed lightly against its surface, the texture of grain reminding her that this was real, that she would not wake from this. Her son, blissfully unaware of the undercurrents, played with the carved wooden animals his father had made. Her decision to let the man inside had been a gesture of human decency in nature's cruel theater, yet now it felt like opening Pandora's box. She longed for the solid presence of her late husband, the comforting warmth of his arm around her, the certainty that they could weather any storm together. But the past had come knocking, and it demanded an audience. With a deep breath, Eleanor moved away from the table and towards confrontation. The air between her and the man charged with unspoken history. "You," she said, her voice an icicle sharp enough to pierce the heart. "Why here? Why now?" A shadow seemed to pass over his eyes, the ghost of years carrying the weight of sorrow and repentance. He met her gaze, his expression one of humility, or was it exhaustion? "I've wandered far, seeking a place where I might find peace," he confessed. "I did not know you lived here. Believe me, if I had only known." Words stumbled from his mouth, tumbling over each other like stones down a mountain. Each one chipped away at Eleanor's defenses, revealing layers of grief and anger she had yet to confront fully. Her mind spun with 1,000 questions. Of all the doors, in all the blizzards, why hers? "What could you possibly be seeking here?" she demanded, her voice softer now but no less intense. Was he looking for redemption? Or was this some cruel cosmic joke, another test of endurance when she hardly had strength left to offer? "There are many ghosts that haunt a man, yours, his, have never left my side." He paused, his gaze dropping to the floor. "I have wronged you, unintentionally, yet undeniably. Every gust of wind seems to whisper it to me." And in that moment, Eleanor saw him not just as the villain of her story, but as a man undone by his own actions. Time did not heal all wounds, she realized, but perhaps it dulled them enough for things like understanding, even empathy, to take root. Still, trust was a fragile bridge, one she wasn't sure she wanted to cross. "What am I to do with this confession of yours?" she asked, her tone steady, perhaps for the first time since his arrival. "Wounds don't heal simply because guilt is confessed." "No, they do not," he conceded, the hint of a tremor in his voice. "But your forgiveness, should you ever grant it, might help me carry the burden a little less heavily." The hours slipped away as snow gathered higher against the door, like grains of sand in an hourglass. With each moment, the storm, both within and outside, seemed to quiet its roar. Eleanor's son, sensing the subdued tone, nestled into her side, grounding her in the present, reminding her that life persisted, even in the harshest conditions. As dawn approached, its gentle light spilling through the frosted window, the tension in the room thinned, leaving behind something more malleable. The man rose, his intentions clear in the silence. It was time to leave. He glanced at Eleanor, a tentative question in his eyes. Eleanor didn't respond immediately. Instead, she pulled her son close, feeling the innocence of his small, sturdy form and the immense responsibility of ensuring his world remained unmarred by the cruelty of the past. For his sake, she chose a path she didn't entirely believe in, yet hoped would lead somewhere promising. "Go." Her voice was firm, carrying both a dismissal and the faintest tinge of something new, perhaps the beginning of compassion deeply buried under layers of resentment. "Whatever you seek, it's not here, but maybe you'll find it." He nodded, understanding that forgiveness, like healing, wasn't instant, and redemption couldn't be rushed. It was a journey, much like finding shelter from a storm. As he disappeared into the white landscape, Eleanor watched him go, the silhouette fading into the swirling snow, leaving a trail of unknown possibilities. She turned back to her son, vowing to shield him from such tempests real and metaphorical. In that promise lay a seed of hope, yet to blossom but alive nonetheless, like the golden light breaking over the snow, announcing a morning where anything seemed possible. Eleanor sat in the cabin that was now filled with a tense silence. The low crackle of the fire seemed to underscore the turmoil in her heart, as she faced the man who had, years before, changed the course of her life forever. Her son, sensing the unease in the room, lay quietly in the corner, watching his mother with wide, trusting eyes. The man's face was lined and weathered, much like the landscape that lay beyond the cabin walls, and his eyes spoke of a life hard lived. Yet they were softened now, perhaps by the warmth of the fire, or maybe by the burden of a confession he was finally ready to make. Eleanor struggled to keep her composure, her hands clasping tightly in her lap to still the tremor of her heart. "I know who you are," Eleanor said, her voice steady but soft, carrying the strength she had found in solitude and adversity. The man nodded solemnly, his gaze dropping to the floor as if ashamed to meet her eyes. "I never thought I'd meet you again," he replied, his voice a rough whisper over the crackling flames. "I've spent every day haunted by what happened." Eleanor's mind traveled back to those days when she was not yet a widow, when her husband, a gentle soul with a hearty laugh, was alive. It was a summer evening that had turned bloody, a senseless altercation over land that was common in those rough, lawless days. She remembered her husband standing firm, his voice calm as his killer. This very man had let anger and fear pull the trigger. "Why are you here now?" Eleanor demanded, bringing herself back from memories that threatened to drown her in grief. "A storm caught me." He gestured to the window, where the blizzard's fury howled mercilessly. "I was passing through, trying to escape who I was." Silence stretched between them, a chasm filled with the weight of their shared history. Eleanor searched his face for any sign of deception, a hint of threat. Instead, she found weary remorse. Yet, trusting him fully was a risk she could not afford. Her son's safety was paramount, yet so was the need for closure. The man continued, his voice gaining strength as the words spilled forth. "I killed your husband, and it's a pain I carry. I've done things, terrible things in those times. I was lost, angry, thoughtless, but I swear, every day since, I've sought penance for my actions." Eleanor's heart twisted. Images of her husband played in her mind, his laughter, his kindness. She remembered the hole his death had carved within her, a wound never fully healed, but hidden beneath the layers of survival and the love for their child. "Do you think words can undo what was done?" she asked, her voice breaking with the weight of unshed tears, tears she had forbidden herself out of necessity. "No," his response was immediate, earnest. "But maybe you can find it in your heart to release the hate. If not for me, then for yourself." Eleanor closed her eyes, battling with the storm inside her that rivaled the one outside. It would be easy to let anger and hatred steer her decisions. They were familiar companions in the lonely nights. But she thought of her son, his future, and the legacy she wished to impart her. Legacy rooted not in vengeance but resilience. Her silence stretched once more, while the cabin settled round them, the warmth slowly soothing the room. The man watched her, perhaps understanding that whatever judgment she cast, he would accept. Redemption was as elusive as the sun on a winter's day, yet still worth seeking. Finally, Eleanor spoke, her voice gentle but firm, like a breeze cutting through the snow. "The pain doesn't vanish. It lingers, and maybe it always will. But for my son, I choose not to pass on hatred." She stood, signaling the end of their encounter. The man nodded, his face lined with gratitude and surprise. "Dawn is coming," Eleanor said, angling her head toward the first light creeping through the shutters. "Perhaps you should leave before the storm returns." The man rose, understanding this was all she could offer. "Thank you," he whispered, the words carrying the weight of his past and hopes for his future. As he stepped outside into the snow's hush, Eleanor remained at the door. She watched him become a shadow against the dawn's burgeoning light, taking with him the specter of her past. Turning back into the cabin, Eleanor knelt beside her son, pulling him close. She pressed a kiss to his brow, her heart swelling with a vow only they could hear to protect him, not just from the storms of nature, but from the storms of her own heart. Some battles were eternal, yet the choice to meet them with grace was hers to make anew each day. In that quiet, closing moment, Eleanor felt a semblance of peace begin to weave through her, like the gentle thawing of winter's grip, bringing with it the promise of spring. As the first light of dawn crept into the cabin, it cast everything in a soft, ethereal glow. The snowfall from the night before lay untouched, a pristine blanket of white that seemed to promise new beginnings. Eleanor stood at the window, watching the stranger silhouetted against the rising sun make his way into the distance until he was nothing more than a speck on the horizon. Her heart was heavy, yet there was a lightness to a release of sorts. The decision to let him go, to choose compassion over vengeance, sat uncomfortably within her, a mix of uneasy peace and lingering resentment. But in that moment, she knew she had chosen the path her heart could bear. Her young son tugged at her hand, his wide eyes full of questions she wasn't ready to answer. Somehow, she found solace in his innocence, a promise that she needed to work toward a world different from the one she had known. She knelt down, pulling him into a tight embrace, feeling the warmth and the rhythm of his small heart. It gave her strength, the kind needed to face the hardships yet to unfold. Time in the harsh Montana wilderness doesn't stop for reflection. There is too much to do, and survival doesn't wait for mourning or pondering over what-ifs. Eleanor shook the lingering fog from her mind, methodically setting about her daily tasks, tending to the cattle, gathering wood, preparing for whatever the winter threw at them next. Each chore, though mundane, brought a sense of normalcy back into her life, a distraction from the emotional toll the night had taken. Occasionally, her thoughts drifted back to the stranger, to his story, his confession, and the dark night he had brought with him. She recalled the tremor in his voice, the haunted look in his eyes, and wondered what life had dealt him after her husband's death. She tried to convince herself that his remorse was genuine, that he was a man as broken by the world as she had been by his actions. But forgiveness is a long journey, and Eleanor, though empathetic, knew it was not a path she was ready to tread just yet. As the day wore on, Eleanor weighed her decision with each action. The quiet moments, when her son napped or played quietly by the hearth, gave her space to think, to wonder whether she had chosen correctly. In her heart, she knew she had saved more than his life. She had saved a part of herself too. What kind of lesson would revenge have taught her son? What kind of future could she have hoped for, burdened by the shadow of her revenge? The wind's howling gradually retreated, replaced by a serene silence that hummed in harmony with her thoughts. Eleanor allowed herself to imagine a future where each decision could be met with grace and understanding. The reality of her world was harsh, yet, as the morning light grew stronger, she recognized that there was also a kind of beauty in that harshness, an unyielding spirit that could not be diminished by mere circumstance. The stranger's figure may have vanished, but his impact lingered, a reminder of choices and the strength necessary to make them. Eleanor pondered what might become of him and whether he would find his redemption. She wanted to believe in the possibility of change, that people could become more than the sum of their worst moments. Perhaps letting him walk away was not just sparing him, but offering both of them a redemption of sorts, a second chance she hadn't known she needed until it presented itself. As shadows stretched and the sun began its descent, Eleanor prepared for another cold night. She had made her choice, and with it, a small peace settled over her. Her son slept, wrapped tenderly in quilts, his gentle breathing a lullaby that soothed her weary soul. Eleanor mused on the wisdom found in forgiving oneself for choosing to move forward, when holding on would be the easier path. In the vast snowy expanse of Montana, the blizzard finally receded, leaving in its wake echoes of newfound resolve. Eleanor took a final glance out the window at the unwavering horizon, a world filled with both challenge and promise, and she knew, though the storms would come, she had the strength to withstand them, finding warmth amidst even the fiercest of tempests.